Welcome to the only place where real, raw, and vulnerable conversations happen with IFBB bikini pros to give you an inside look at their struggles, strategies, mindset, passions, and all of life beyond the stage. This podcast is made to inspire, motivate, and remind competitors and the average gym goer that even the most extreme lifestyles and elite athletes have their ups and downs. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm your host, Celeste Rains-Turk, and now it's time for the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. Okay, so before we dive into this absolutely incredible, value-filled episode, I do have a quick announcement. And to give you a backstory real quick, I have some serious big visions and goals with this podcast. I love running this podcast. I love hearing the feedback from you all about the podcast, and I intend to absolutely continue with incredible growth of the podcast. Now, those goals that I have, there's big visions. Like, I'm talking red carpet events. I'm talking awesome meet and greets. I'm talking real fun activities, merchandise, things of this nature to really be able to create a community around it. And I was expressing these ideas that I was having beyond even what I've mentioned here. And I'm going to tell you how you can learn about those. But I was talking to my boyfriend about this and he was like, "Have you ever heard of Patreon?" And I was like, "No." And he starts explaining it to me and I was super skeptical. I was like, okay. So I started doing my research and I actually found that it was very interesting and quite honestly, something that I'm very excited about. So I decided to create a Patreon account to give you guys, the listeners, an opportunity to support me as a creator. And what does this mean? It means that when you go into Patreon, and mine is patreon.com/celestialfit, you can actually choose to become a patron. And as a patron, you're basically like a top supporter of the podcast. And how you become a patron, is by donating, but I'm not even going to call it donating because that doesn't feel right, but that's what a lot of people call it, subscribing money every single month, and that will allow you to receive certain tiers, rewards, etc. So it's like a subscription to receive extra. Now, I'm going to be very upfront with you. I don't have any tiers set up. In fact, I don't know what you guys really want. But what I have set up are goals. And the goals directly benefit you as a patron. And if you choose to support me on Patreon, thank you in advance. That is so amazing of you. If you don't, or you just need more info, but you have ideas for tiers that I could offer, please don't hesitate to reach out to me on social media. Even if you do choose to become a patron and still have ideas, please share them. I want to make sure that this is something totally worth your while so that you feel confident in subscribing. But definitely, even if you're not considering subscribing, it might still be fun for you to just go look at the goals that I have to see where this podcast is heading, because regardless, I'm going to make it happen. So with all of that being said, I hope you really enjoy this episode as much as I did. And if you have any questions about Patreon, just let me know, but you can read everything on patreon.com/celestialfit. From here on out, a lot of these episodes will be sponsored by those of you who choose to become patrons, of course, because the money goes directly back into the podcast and creating super awesome experience for you all and expanding. So I don't want to blab any further. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Confessions of a Bikini Pro podcast. I am super excited about this episode. I have been anxiously awaiting this one myself, and I just can't wait to dive in with this absolute boss of a woman. She is the owner of Team Pulse, Santa Cruz Sports Nutrition, and Santa Cruz Power Fitness, a dental hygienist, a mother, and a top 10 competitor at both the Olympia and the Arnold Classic. She just competed at the Olympia and Legion Sports Festival, which qualified her for the Arnold. Correct me if I'm wrong, but welcome, Camile Periat. How are you doing?
Wow, that was quite an intro, Celeste. I'm doing really good.
Awesome. I'm so happy to have you here, and I really do mean it. I'm very excited. I have personally been following your journey for a long time, have found so much inspiration, and just love the way that you show up and the person that you are and the competitor you are. Your mindset's always really powerful. And that's something that we're going to talk a lot about today.
Okay.
But before we really get into it, I always just love to know, like, what is going on in your mind, or what are some of the rituals that you have right before your heel hits the stage?
So, well, I look at a show as like kind of like how a warrior would go into battle. Like I literally prepare myself for a battle, and I even when I'm like weeks out when I'm training in the gym, like that's how when people ask me like, what gets you motivated to like finish, to get through, and that's literally what gets me motivated. I have a lot of love and respect for my fellow competitors. A lot of us are really good friends, but when it's down to like showtime, it's game on. So I literally envision like beating them and I look at it as a battle, and that's it's competition. So you have to have that kind of mindset. And I think it takes some people time to kind of get to that point. A lot of people when they first get started out competing, it's kind of like they're doing it for a bucket list or to something to try out, or so as you I guess mature as a competitor, you look at it as kind of like a battle. So that's my mindset leading to a show. And I do have a ritual, which is kind of weird, but I swear like it's my lucky charm. My daughter Lola about 2 years ago gave me these like 4 crystals, and I was getting ready to go fly out to Miami to compete on a show. Actually, no, it was like I think it's Omaha, but she gave me these crystals, and she was, I think, like 6 years old at the time. And she's like, "Good luck, mommy. Here's my good luck crystals." And so I took them with me, and I put them under my pillow before I went to bed that night. And I won my very first pro show that day. And I was like, oh my gosh, these lucky crystals work. So then I competed the next weekend in Miami, and I won another show back to back. And so ever since then, I have taken those lucky crystals with me, and I put them under my pillow. Sometimes I don't win, but they really do. I don't know, like that's my ritual. It's my lucky crystals that Lola gave to me. And then last weekend, or maybe it was like actually about 10 days ago at the Legion Sports, Lola came to my very first show. So I had her lucky crystals under my pillow, and then she slept with me in my bed, and boom, I won. So
yes,
that is. So Lola might be having to come to all my shows now.
Yes, now she's the magic crystal.
Yeah.
That's so cool. I love that. And how amazing that she probably just knew like intuitively that would help you, that's what you needed, like total pure love, just wanting to show her support. And like on the topic of your daughter, of course, you're proof that someone can live a healthy lifestyle, even to the extreme commitment required for competing, like at the most elite level, at any age, while also being a mom and a business professional. So I know this kind of thing doesn't just happen by accident, right? So what would you say is the difference in the mindset between someone like you who manages this and someone who finds it overwhelming or maybe even impossible?
So that's a good question. And I've talked to a lot of, I coach competitors as well. And a lot of my competitors and other women who are older, they have jobs, they have careers, they have kids. They find competing or just having that structure very easy. And it's because we're so busy that having your food laid out for you or being told what to eat or just having it all mapped out, it's the easy part. I think it's people who, I'm gonna, before I dive into the next one, I'm gonna continue on with what we're talking about. Having everything laid out for you so you don't have to think about it. You're so busy that you're not thinking about like, oh, this is so hard. It's just food. You're just doing it. The challenging part can be, when do I train? When do I do this? So I have to really plan everything out like a week in advance because my days are always different. I don't do dental hygiene anymore. I used to, and when I would do that, I would wrap up my patient as fast as I could before lunchtime, and then I would run out the door. I would go to the gym, which was, down the street from my dental office, and I would bust out like a 45-minute lunch like workout, throw my scrubs back on and eat my food driving back to work. That was my routine for many years.
Wow.
Now that I have, I own a gym and a nutrition shop, but, I'm still there all the time. Maybe an employee doesn't show up, or I'm having to do meetings or whatever. I have to really adjust the times that I train, based on when I'm able to. So, and sometimes they're only like 40 minutes, but I have to just, dedicate that time to my training, and I might be having to split up, my cardio on some days, but you just map it out, plan ahead, organize your time, and get it done.
Yes, absolutely. It's about getting it done and doing what it takes to actually make that happen. So,
Yeah.
what do you think then is necessary mindset wise for a successful prep?
For a successful prep, first of all, to have a successful prep, I think you need to have the support of everyone around you. People who have maybe a spouse or a boyfriend or a wife or a girlfriend or anyone that's really close to them that doesn't fully support it, or that, is maybe a competitor who might be having to fight, being in prep and then, living a lifestyle that's not in prep to appease that other person. That's going to be challenging. So making sure that you have everyone in your circle on board with it. Having the mindset that, yes, you're going to have some days that are challenging, but you just do it. I'm the type of person that I work out every day, regardless of if I'm in prep or not in prep. And I eat clean regardless too. It's just something I'm used to. So for me, it's really no different. I might have to resist certain snacks or eating my daughter's food or things like that. But it's just a mindset. It's like, nope, I've got a show. I'm going to be, competing. And the more you do it, the more competitive you get. You know what to expect. It becomes a lot easier. And a lot of young competitors, I don't mean age-wise, but experience-wise, they ask me, does it get easier as you go in the longer you compete? And it totally does. Your body becomes used to it. You understand your body so much more. You understand how long it takes for your body to get to a certain point, and you understand phases that your body is going to go through. So the more you compete, it becomes a lot easier for most people. So I know I kind of got a little off on the subject
No,
there, but
that was that was great insights. I
good.
appreciate that. Yeah, absolutely. That was perfect and really provides a lot of information, I think, to everybody listening. Like, it really does come down to the fact that it's a mindset like, success is a mindset, and the more that you do it, the more that you practice it, the easier it becomes, and the more you
Yeah.
learn. And that's
Yeah.
super powerful.
And, I think a lot of people, when they're in prep, it's like, nope, I can't, I'm in prep, and we do sacrifice a lot with our, social life, our families, even though we might not see it, our families suffer as well. So having, like, as a mom, I can't just like, I'm in prep, it's like, she's my priority. So if something happens and I'm going to the gym, well, maybe I won't be able to go to the gym that day, or, if whatever, but you have to balance your life, because there is life beyond competitions, and you have to, you can't just exclude yourself from family functions, from friends. Maybe if you're having a specific diet that's very structured, learning how to modify meals so you can go out, like, learning how to order certain food a different way so you can be a part of, social events. That's really, really important. I don't like to show up to parties and eat out of Tupperware. I would rather, like, dismiss myself, go outside and eat in my car and then come back in. Like,
Yeah.
then have to, like, because it makes other people feel uncomfortable. Or I just will, plan ahead and make a certain event like a refeed, and just choose healthier options. So balancing out, normal life and prep is also going to make it easier and more maintainable.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I was even gonna get into with you just in regard to the like definition of balance, right? Because a lot of people talk about finding balance, especially into the off season. But I think that
Yeah.
balance can be defined differently from person to person and lifestyle to lifestyle, based on goals, life, etc. So I'm curious for you
Yeah.
specifically, like how is your life different in the off season? Like I know you mentioned that there's not much of a difference, but what would you say are some of the key differences or ways that you do find or define balance?
So yes, I know what you're talking about. There are different ways when we talk about balance that people are referring to. So I think the balance that you're talking about is how to balance, someone who's transitioning into off season, how to balance everything else so they don't completely fall off the Richter. Is that what you're kind of asking?
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of people talk about how that's so important, but yet not everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to do to get that.
Right. And it's so confusing, and there's so much confusion. And I really feel bad for a lot of these people that, there's so many different types of dieting that it's confusing as hell. Like reverse dieting, if it's your macros. Now there's a lot of talk about intuitive dieting. There's reverse dieting. There's keto. There's carb cycling. What do you do? It gets really confusing. And my method, what I do for myself personally is, this also comes with experience of knowing your body and, understanding nutritional values, is when you're in prep, I think it's first of all really important to understand what your macros are rather than, there's a lot of talk about bro science or, bro diet and macros. Well, myself personally, I do kind of follow like a bro diet, which is what that is it's like, pretty much like chicken rice, the main groups and just measured out. But then I also know what my macros are with that. It's not just flexible dieting where I can have like a donut and then that took some of the fats here, some of the carbs here. I think it's important to have whole foods and really clean dieting style during your prep. But when you're in your transitioning into your off season, knowing what your values were and how they worked with your body, continuing on kind of that style, but then adding in some flexibility. So when I say flexibility, what I do with my off season is I still prep my meals the way I did during my prep. It's pretty basic and boring, but for me it's easy because I'm always on the go. And that's, before I leave for the day, I'll measure out, my chicken, rice, vegetables. And then at nighttime, I might, I've been really good during the daytime. I might have like, a healthy, modified family dinner that we all enjoy together, some halo top, and just kind of let loose, a cocktail. But I'm not, I don't really count. I just listen to my body. That's the other thing is that I think so many people are so disconnected with their body that, if I'm feeling really bloated one day or feeling like I've gained a lot of weight or just, fast, if it happens fast, I evaluate what I've eaten the past couple of days and like, oh, okay, well, I had a burger and fries. I had ice cream. I had seeds candy. Okay, maybe that was a little bit too much. So you have to just, listen to your body, taper back, and kind of resort back to prepping styles because when we're done with prep, everyone most people freak out. They're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to eat. You do. You've been doing it for this whole time. But you just need to slowly ease back into it. We're not resilient after prep. Like we're going to gain that weight back. And people are sorry, like talking fast and I'm losing my breath.
No, it's great.
I'm getting excited. But people, so when you're in competition prep, because you're a competitor yourself, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So when we're in competition prep, we're doing, we're training hard, we're doing cardio, we're in a caloric deficit to get to a certain body fat percentage while maintaining our lean mass. And our bodies are, we're overtraining, but we're going to reach a certain phase. So anytime you back off of any of that, you're going to start to get a rebound. Even when you back off, like if you're taking a fat burner, if you are, doing cardio and you start to taper off that cardio, if you start to increase your calories, you're going to experience rebound. But how fast you do it, that's another thing. So slowly doing it is a good way to kind of transition and balance. So when I say balance, it's kind of, you're kind of doing a little bit of both worlds, but paying close attention to where you're at.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree, and I'm fully on board with that. I find that the best thing in heading into like an off season is, at least for me personally as well, similarly to you, I prep all the meals the same, but then I have a lot more flexibility with them. Maybe I use a sauce that I haven't used in a while, or
Right.
maybe I throw in some extra protein or try a different type of protein, or I
Yes.
rather have someone else make it for me. I'll go out to eat it. And I could literally still order chili lime chicken, but it's like, okay, it's just different. Someone made it for me. I'm not concerned with like, make sure there's not this, that, and the other. So finding that
Right.
like good mix. And then what I really like about what you said is about tuning into your body. After my show recently, I was so bloated, even with the clean foods. My body was just like, what's happening? Like, what has been going on? And I think it was because I was
Right.
introducing like foods almost like quickly and everything all at once, so versus a little bit here and there. And
Mm-hmm.
so that made a big difference, just shifting that. But it sometimes can be painful, I think, for competitors, because you start to see your body changing and you start to go through these changes that are physically necessary, of course. And, it's
Right.
obvious that bodybuilding is an extreme version of a healthy lifestyle. And
Right.
each body isn't necessarily maintainable or sustainable in a healthy way. So, what would your insight be for others to improve their health along with this journey? Because we're increasing these calories, we're decreasing cardio more than likely, and limiting the supplement intake that we're having, like you said, fat burners, things like that. So when it
Yeah.
comes to improving health while also maintaining a physique that they're happy about, what would your insight be there?
Are you talking about for someone who's in prep or off prep?
Off prep, like they just finished show, they're going into like improvement season. Now
Yeah.
maybe their health was, maybe they weren't getting like certain nutrients, etc. What would your insight be?
So I'm all about, when I'm in my off season, I like to really, like, I look at my body as like, even though it's healthy and it's running really well and my metabolism is usually runs really high, I like to look at it as like it needs repair. And I've been doing the same thing for so long that I want to feed it like, maybe some like different types of leafy greens, like kale. I want to do more like, gut health type of nutrition. So, that will also help with digestion. Just, I like going to Whole Foods, for an example, when I start my off season, and walk through the aisles and just look at the different things that they have. And one thing that I found last week, and I love it, is called Gut Shots, and it's probiotics, but it's basically kind of like apple cider vinegar. And this is something you can actually use in prep as well, but it really helps your body with digestion. It helps reduce bloating. So that has really helped me a lot
Wow.
after since I've ended my prep. After I end my prep, even though my calories might be super high, I might be doing refeeds leading into my shows, and I almost like start a reverse diet style leading into my shows because I need to bring up my calories. But still, as soon as you kind of start to get off that routine, even I get, bloating and just, water retention, all that. So making sure that after a show, making sure that you drink a lot of water, like at least a gallon a day, to really flush everything out. Focusing on, internal health, digestion, so you can process food properly, probiotics, digestive enzymes. Those are all really big to me right now, especially since I'm, incorporating other foods, and it's making a big difference. And this sounds super kind of basic and embarrassing, but, it's very normal for competitors to get really bloated and kind of just like their stomachs get super expanded and puffy. So that happened to me, and I took Gas-X, totally went away. So this things like that where, that you can do to help kind of just decrease that inflammation, and it it worked. And it's like, oh, okay. So that was just a little gas, you know?
Yes, absolutely. That is, I found that too. Like I noticed, like the other night, for example, I changed up like the vegetable that I had before bed, and I was like, oh, I'm a little bloated now. And I took gas pill, and I was fine. In the morning, I was like, wow, I haven't been this not like this not bloated in a long time. And it's like learning the body that way. And then yeah, this past couple weeks I've been focused so much on the internal health, and that's something that I think that a lot of competitors kind of realize, like, oh my gosh, we are always so one track mind. It's really easy, like on prep, like we were talking about earlier with structure. The structure
Yeah.
is such a relief because you are busy in your everyday life. Like that actually makes it easier. But then it's like you
Right.
become so one track mind. Like I remember even after my show, sometimes I'm like, okay, just gonna have my chicken and veggies and my sweet potato, blah, blah. And it's like, wait, I should probably mix this up. I should get some different nutrients. And maybe instead of an apple at meal 3, maybe I'm having watermelon or something different, and testing how it works with the body. So I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Right.
helpful and it feels good. And then you get to see also like, wow, maybe my body actually prefers this over that. Maybe this is something I can even take into my next prep or talk to my coach about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and those types of things can, I think in the beginning of someone, towards the beginning when someone is in prep, that's also a good time to kind of experiment. Like, you know, not, you know, potatoes might have a different reaction to you than rice will, or vice versa. Or, you know, there's blood type diets. Maybe certain proteins are going to be, you know, harder for you to digest than other proteins. So, you know, that's also when communication with your coach and you, and being fine, like in tune with your body, and not being afraid to try things out, and, you know, taking risks. That's how you learn that's how you learn about your body, and that's how you improve. You know, you're not going to, you know, you won't learn something new, or, you know, overcome something if you didn't take a risk. So, you know, each prep, there's, you know, we try new things, and sometimes I'm like screaming and kicking along the way because like I'm freaked out. And you know, it's like my fiance Chris, he runs my diet for competition season, and living with your fiance who's also your coach can be challenging, but he's really good at it. And, you know, he knows my body, he sees me every day. But sometimes I'm like, no, I'm putting my foot down on this. I'm not doing this. He's like, listen to me. I'm like, okay. It always works, you know, but it's like you have to take risks to understand and to try new things out. So it also applies in your off season, you know, exploring new foods, trying things out, having fun with it. Doesn't mean, you know, I don't think when people say they want to, you know, I can't eat normal food anymore, you know, because it does this, I've had metabolic damage, or, you know, I just want to be able to eat normal food again. And maybe they're referring to, you know, burgers and pizza and, you know, cookies and stuff like that. That's not normal food to eat all the time. It's not healthy for anyone to eat all the time. It, like, in moderation, you know, it's like if before they did the competition prep, they were probably not eating that much in abundance anyway. So, you know, I think people kind of lose sight. Competitors, we get a skewed sense of food. So you have to just, you know, have a healthy mind and look at your body as, you know, it's something that is important. And your off season, the way you have your off season is going to also help you prepare for your next prep. So, you know, having a successful off season where your body is at a healthy weight, where you have not put on too much body fat and you've allowed for a little bit of muscle growth, you know, you're not going to have to be struggling to drop body fat. You're focusing more on conditioning for your actual prep. Like, that's a very successful prep. When it starts to focus more on actual just weight loss, the conditioning is going to be very hard to dial in. So, you know, off seasons are very important, and you can find flexibility and balance with fun foods that aren't bad for you.
Yes, totally. It can be really awesome just to experiment with healthy and foods that give you actual life and energy, and recognizing like your body is this vessel and this vehicle that deserves to be treated as such. And I think that when we really connect to ourselves, like you said, like really get in touch with our body and listen and tune in, we find that the desire for the what most people would call normal food, which I'm with you on the fact that that's normal doesn't always mean good, right? But
Right.
when we start to think about, well, why do I actually want this? What's actually making me have this desire? We find that so much of it just comes down to the fact that we didn't have it before. Now it's there. We can have it. But in reality, we don't actually want it. You know, our body's actually like, please don't feed me that. And we can see that it's saying that when it starts giving us, let's say, bloating, acne, gas, fat gain
Right.
in an excessive way, or potentially just low energy. Like being able to notice those things is so beneficial. And I haven't even announced this or talked about it yet, but I'm going to be doing a post.
You're pregnant.
No, oh my gosh. Thank God. Yeah,
Just
that
kidding.
would be so funny if I announced that on here. Yeah, no. I'm gonna be doing like a post season like program to help people with these things, because it's something that I think that, you know, despite how important and beneficial that we know mindset work is and personal development is and food relationships are, I notice that a lot of people, you know, especially competitors, actually neglect this side of the training. They invest
Totally.
hours in the gym. You know, we're investing thousands of dollars on coaching and stage presence, and we invest our time meal prepping, we invest our time in the gym. We're actually investing, and I guess we could say diversifying our income by the way that we, and our time by the way that we're spending it with or without our family as well. So, you know, as soon as the process gets mental, it almost seems like there's an avoidance pattern. So how would you explain to someone the importance and true value of investing their time and energy into the mindset work?
Um, very important because, you know, I think with a lot of it is, well, I think I understand what you're talking about, and I'm going to kind of just go the direction I think that you're talking about.
For sure.
But, I think, you know, having, you know, we started off by talking about the mindset and having a strong mind. And I think a lot of it that we're talking about also with, it's not, it comes down to not just competitors, but it comes to just, you know, people as a whole. And especially, you know, our society in America, you know, we have a very high obesity, you know, percentage. And, you know, we seem to really struggle with body image, more so than other societies. And I think it also comes down to emotional connect with food. You know, a lot of athletes, you know, people who, for example, who binge, people who have a binging disorder and they can't stop themselves. That's not because, like, that stems from something in their childhood, most likely. And so having that, you know, understanding, and I've worked with a lot of women who have had this, and I've identified the triggers and work, you know, educating and working with people on, okay, you had a binge. What is, you know, what triggered that? Well, they were sad, or they were, you know, something happened and they, you know, they had a stressful day at work and they couldn't stop. But, you know, having to identify triggers before certain things happen, it comes down to a strong mind, and it might take trial and error. It might take weeks, it might take months, it might take years to overcome a disorder such as, you know, binging. But, you know, identifying like, okay, I'm starting to feel this way. I'm getting the urges to go get food. You know, that's not like, I'm going to feel like, you know, maybe 5 minutes of happiness while I'm doing that. And then afterwards, I'm going to feel gross about myself. I'm going to feel more depressed. Understanding the whole process in which you think is important. I know that Chloe went off probably on a different road than you were asking.
No,
but
that's
it comes down to having a really strong mind, understanding yourself. And I think, you know, it comes with time. When I was in my 20s, I went through an anorexic phase, and I went through a bulimic phase. I don't really know why I acquired that. I think it was like society and trying to fit in. That was also when like the waist look was in, and I always had kind of a more, I wouldn't say stout body, but it was a little bit more athletic. And that was, the whole waist look was in. So I struggled with a little bit of that. And, when I started getting close to, my age 30, I grew out of it. And I started to understand the importance of food. I wasn't so fearful of it anymore. I didn't think if I ate this one thing, I was going to just blow up. I started embracing weight training and how food can benefit your body and how you can actually look better if you eat more food. So it comes with, personal growth as well. But, having a strong mind can be challenging for a lot of people to embrace, but it's very important.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if I answered your question.
You did. You gave me so much. You gave me a lot more than I expected in a beautiful way, because when you said like binging a lot of times comes from somewhere else, that's 100% true. Like a lot of times it's because there's some sort of like void we're trying to fill, or sometimes if we're like avoiding food, it's because we feel that maybe we're not actually worthy of the nutrients that it's going to provide us. So it's really interesting, and identifying the triggers is so important. And when we start to do that, then I think that's when the personal growth starts to come a lot faster, because we're willing to shine light on those dark places, and we're willing to see like, oh, I see what's actually causing this. I see why I'm actually doing this. And also knowing like the process, like you said, of what actually occurs when I do this, what's the aftermath? Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like? That can be motivation to not
do it.
Right, exactly. Because we can be motivated by the pain, or we can be motivated by the fact that like, okay, well, sometimes we can always ask ourselves, like, what happens if I do this, right? Like, what happens if I stayed 100% on my plan? Or what happens if I never ate this again? But it's like, okay, well, what happens if I don't? Sometimes the most powerful thing we can ask ourselves is what happens if we don't? And we can learn so much just from that, and know, like, what do we really want? If we took away all of the societal like identifications, all the beliefs, all these things that are literally being conditioned into us on a daily basis based on what we're consuming, through the mind, that is, like, we literally can find that what we want is so different than what we thought, like what our ego wants, right?
Right. And, maybe even counseling is important if it's stemming from, deep embedded, events or whatever. But, overcoming that, I think is, and identifying and understanding that is really important. And a lot of athletes do have this habit or disorder. And I recommend to athletes or people who are considering a competition who suffer from an eating disorder, like, do not do it, because, there are some cases where it has, improved and helped them overcome, the fear of eating. But most of the time it might, create more triggers for them. It can enhance a yo-yo style diet where they're, binging and then having to starve. And it's, so going back to the competing question, I think you asked a little bit ago, like entering, having a really strong mind and being in a healthy mental space is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many disorders that are literally being perpetuated on a day-to-day basis and it being accepted as normal, but they're not normal. Like, they're actually not healthy and they're not okay, and they need to be, addressed. But they have become such the norm, such a part of some people's lifestyle, that they just get ignored or accepted as what they are. But that has been a super, super valuable insights on that topic. And I kind of just want to shift a little bit into like your experience through this sport with patience and even limiting comparison, because we talked a little bit about like other competitors as well as just like body image and things like that. But what about the comparison that happens? Because I think it's sometimes we can get caught up in that trap of comparing ourselves to other competitors or people who have been in it for X amount of time, or doing this and that and doing other things than us. But what's your own experience been like throughout this sport with remaining patient and limiting comparison to others?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I think it's, it's very easy to look at someone who has a winning physique and look at it and be like, okay, I need to look like this. Well, no one's going to be able to look like the other person. So, I might look at a girl who, say, take Angelica Teixeira, for example, Miss Bikini Olympia, 2 time. She has an amazing physique. I love her physique, but will I have her physique? No. Like she has really large, round, full glutes, and she has a small waist. I mean, we all kind of resemble similar things, but you don't like, she has her physique, and that's something that you just cannot emulate. You can improve your own personal physique, and you can bring out certain qualities in your physique, you know, you versus you, the whole thing, you versus you. Like, it's true. Like, I don't look at other athletes that I'm competing against being like, oh, if only I look like her. I don't. I'm like, oh, she has a killer body. Okay. Like, I see her proportions. I might actually shift around my prep or training to kind of like, or posing to kind of emulate what, some of the top athletes are bringing, so you can be, comparable to them. But comparing yourself, because that is a sport that we're in. We're getting judged and we're being compared to others. But, trying to make yourself look like somebody else, it's just not going to happen. You can make, maybe it's filling out more. You need to eat more. If you need to, if you're looking stringy, if you're against like really full girls, you can do things like that. But as far as, making yourself look like a certain different person, that's just not going to happen.
Right, exactly. And I think that allows us to then just embrace like who we are, our own genetics, and then focus on our own growth. And I know like I've definitely been guilty of being impatient or comparing my journey to someone else's. And it wasn't really until I learned to honor my own journey and recognize the true power and strength in the journey of others, as well as the needs of the body, that I developed a deeper understanding and respect for the sport itself and what it actually takes to become an elite professional, not just, and I don't mean not just a pro, because I know it no matter who you are, what you are, however long it takes, becoming a pro is an accomplishment. But I think that to get to the elite level, there's something different. And like I said, I think it's easy in this industry to compare ourselves. And, I see some girls my
Yeah.
age with like muscular maturity that I've only seen in women, like, let's say 10 years older than me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But, like,
Right.
it is definitely better to just look at it from the perspective of like, well, what do I need to do to bring my best versus why is she this?
Right. Okay. I now I completely understand what you're asking. I think I answered like a little bit of it, and I won't go too crazy into this, but yes, I love where you're going with this because, um, okay, how old are you, Celeste?
I'm 21.
Okay, so your generation, I'm not targeting you, but I'm going to use your generation as a whole.
Yes.
You guys were born with the internet. You guys anything that you guys want, it's at your fingertips as far as information, it's all right there. So it's the attention span or the patience is very, very minimal because anything you want, it's at your fingertips as far as information. It's okay. Am I
It's
making sense with
instantly
that?
gratified. Yes, I
Yes,
totally
everything is
get you.
instant gratification. And if you have to wait, it's like, what? I have to wait? So when it comes down to training, I mean, when I was in high school, the internet was just getting invented. Okay. So like I had to go to the library. I had to go to, we had encyclopedia books at home. Like we didn't have the internet, let alone smartphones, so we didn't even have the cell phones. So, having, there's different characteristics of different generations, but the younger generation for sure, it's like instant gratification, instant information. And so when it comes down to training and wanting to look a certain way or adding muscle, okay, well that is like the slowest process ever. And it takes so much time. And so people are like, oh, 12-week transformation, I'm going to look like this. No, I've been doing, I played sports throughout middle school, high school. I swam competitively on the swim team. I've always been active. And so I had that underlying muscle for a long time, and I'm older, so I have more density there. So when people start comparing themselves to other people, it's like everyone's journey is way, way, way different, and their pace. And what you might see in somebody else as, like, wow, she has it so easy, or she looks like this and must, she's so lucky. But that person who, might make it look really easy, they have their own struggles too. And
Yes.
they're fighting their own demons, because we all have, there's always obstacles. Someone who takes longer to lean out, someone who leans out really quickly. Both people have challenges that they face. One person is trying to lean out, the other person is trying to stay full, and they're losing all their muscle mass, and they need to, their feedback is coming fuller. So everyone has their own struggles, and it takes time just knowing yourself and being, mentally mature and physically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's really, really great insight. And there's absolutely no denying that that is the way that our generation has really begun to shift, I guess you could say. Like that's what we're kind of rooted in. And I think that's part of what makes the sport so fulfilling, is because it gives us that opportunity, if we're willing to take it, to actually
To work for it.
yes, and see what that feels like, and to find that fulfillment, and to experience that drive, and that literal, like, oh my gosh, I'm able to build and develop whatever I want of myself. And that's
Right.
empowering. That is freeing. That is purposeful and meaningful. And I think that
Totally. And
mhm,
I want to add one thing here
please
to
do.
people who are going to be chiming in, is that this also applies to an off season. So if someone is, new to this, and they need to add on muscle, like they're told, like, you need, come back with more size up on top, fuller, larger glutes. Like I suggest, when I tell my athletes, like take like at least 8 months off. And most of the time those clients will come back like 3 months later and be like, I'm itching to compete. Okay, can we, I'm like, no, like embrace your off season. So that, like, people get freaked out by off seasons and don't understand, like they get freaked out by them. But the off season is so important. So being patient during prep to watch the results happen, and being patient in your off season, because that's when the work is getting made. Like that's when things are happening, is in your off season. Like that's when you lean down, it's like you want to look down and be like, oh yeah, like I worked hard for this. But it takes a long time in your off season to get that. Like people don't realize that for a woman to put on, like, for if most women, if they're naturally prepping, and they're training hard and have a surplus of calories for a year, they might put on 3 to 5 pounds of muscle, maybe. Like that's pushing it to the 5 pound range. That's over a year of heavy training and not being in a deficit. Like that's how hard it is to put on muscle. So it's a very patient process that people need to have with their, each phase.
Yes, and also so many things that we can't even see beneath the surface. Like you might have low testosterone, you might have an extreme amount of estrogen that might be too high. Like there could be other factors playing into like the speed of which your journey is going, and that just might be how your
Yeah.
body sits naturally too. And so I think that's really key insight. I'm glad that you added that, because taking that time can be scary, especially if we allow those fears of, oh, I'm going to gain so much fat, or I'm not going to look the way I want, or it's going to be so hard in the prep. It's like, well, why not just look at it from that long-term perspective, right? If you really love this, then why not spend an extra 6 months? Why not take the extra time? It's so fun anyways, that if you really enjoy it, and like have fun, like it, like each prep has its own, or each phase, each season has its own advantages and opportunities. And I think it was my coach who actually said this, but there was something about, like, it's like Michael Jordan spends his off season, right? That's when they're practicing. But it's like when you look at a season, right? Like in season,
Mm-hmm.
any sport, they are back to back games. You know, their practices are not as like every day of every week, all the time, and hours in the
Right.
weekend. It's like they have to focus on showing up and recovering, showing up, recovering, like learning from it. So it's like the fine tuning and the details. And that's what you were saying with prep. It's like conditioning versus building and making the physique appear.
Right. That's so Michael Jordan's an awesome example of that. Absolutely. And it's, you know, the off seat, like people talk about post show depression and how to deal with that. And, you know, if I experienced that. And when I was a young competitor, I did. I was just like, I don't know how to eat. I would ask my coach, like, I need a diet. I need a diet. And he was like, okay, here's some macros. And, you know, people who are trying to reverse diet, if you can properly reverse diet, and when I mean that, I mean successfully follow through, like kudos to you, because I think reverse dieting is one of the hardest things to do. You know, it's like the goal is to gain weight slowly, but you're still eating a certain way. And there's like, I like having a mental break. Like that's my way of being like, I can be a mom again. I can be, you know, my fiance and I can go out to dinner and like have dates and stuff like that. You know, that to me, that's balance. Um,
Yeah.
but, you know, post-show depression, like I love my off season. Like I still like to be athletic and I still like to train hard and I still eat clean. So I feel good about the way I'm looking, but I'm also, you know, more curvaceous. But that's when things happen. If otherwise you're going to lean out and you're going to be like, oh, my before and after picture from my last show is kind of similar. Like you want to start seeing some changes, you know, and that's how they're made.
Yeah, be comfortable with that growth period. Like that's what's gonna make you like actually look back and go, I made something happen. Like that time I invested was worth it. And I'm glad that I did that. So
Yeah.
when it comes to you like spending that time and developing the muscular maturity over the years and just remaining patient season after season, what are some of the things that you've done that you would actually attribute your successes to?
As far as what is allowed for muscle maturity.
Yeah, and just like muscle building in general, like show after show, season after season, you're always improving. You're taking that time to do so. So, what are some of
Yeah.
those things that attribute to that?
So in the past, I was totally anti-supplementation. Like I was just like, I don't want, you know, I didn't think they worked. I was all like, just training and food, that's all you need. But really, when I started to incorporate some supplementation, I really did start noticing changes. And as far as the density and growth, I talk about it a lot on my personal stories and I recommend it to my athletes. I take it myself, but it's something called Laxonin. It's plant-based, but it really does help improve your muscle, increase your muscle density, that muscle hardness, increases your strength. So I use this and it's non-hormonal. You can cycle it year round. So I will use it in my off season. I will also use it leading into shows or bridging shows when I'm at risk of losing that muscle, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
fullness. I'll use it between shows to really help you know, keep my muscles sustained. So that's one thing.
What was it called
You know,
again? Lac.
the ingredient is called Laxonin. The one I personally use is called Laxoplex, and they have a Laxoplex figure for women. But the main thing is the Laxonin. For a woman, you want to have 50 milligrams. Men can take anywhere from 100 to 150 milligrams. So Laxoplex or Laxonin, that's the ingredient, but that is an amazing supplement. People who use it, they love it. So I stand firmly by that. You know, BCAAs, all those are going to help support your training, your recovery. Incorporating certain foods around your training is critical. So, you know, learning which carbohydrates, for an example, maybe work well for you. I really love white rice, and I will, you know, make sure that whatever time of day I'm training at, I'm surrounding a lot of my meals with carbohydrates before and after that training session. Let's see, what else? Training hard, training heavy, because you're not going to make changes unless you're really breaking that plateau, that comfort zone, tearing those fibers. So going hard and not just kind of going through the motions, but really kind of embracing an uncomfortable feeling. The whole sport is uncomfortable, but you have to learn how to like being uncomfortable. Either we're, when we're cutting, we're in like a degree of hunger kind of, or just like, just barely where we're like, okay, next meal. And then in the off season, when we're training, like you're kind of living in the constant state of uncomfortableness.
Yeah. Yes, that's so true. And I think that supplementation is something that there's so much out there. There's so much knowledge. There's so much that we can be doing for ourselves that can help us and support us in our goals, depending on what season we're in or where we're at in our journey. And nutrient timing, definitely really important. I absolutely am the same way. I always surround my workouts with carbs because it just personally, and some people they don't need it, but for me personally, it makes such a difference in the energy I bring to the training session.
Totally.
Yeah, it's like a whole different game. I've trained fasted before, and sometimes I really like it. It gets me like feeling good, and it's nice to just start my day. But the amount of weight I can lift, the energy I can bring to the table, even just like the confidence, it just changes.
Well, we're bikini girls, so when we have to train legs, training legs or glutes hard fasted is not fun to do. If I'm training arms, or if you're training arms fasted or like back or something, that's not nearly as bad as having to work legs fasted.
Oh, I totally agree. But I had to bring my legs down.
If you're trying to bring your legs down or you're trying to tone down, then yes, doing that fasted is definitely important to do. But you're trying to grow, fasted training is not the most optimal, I don't think.
Yeah, no, not necessary at all. And, as a top competitor who's done a lot of pro shows, you've seen all sorts of competitors from newcomers who qualify in their early years as a pro and crush it. And then you've also seen the seasoned pros who have been climbing the ranks. And either way, what do you think is required to truly be among the best of the best? Because you are among the best of the best. So what do you think is required to be there?
I think there only a select few hit that high level early on in their pro career. Most of us have to, it's like showing up. It took me 2 years to break first call outs as a pro. And I continued on just because I loved competing. But it just takes being continuous, being consistent, over time, panels will get to know you. They judges like to see when they're like, okay, I told this girl to improve this, come back with bigger this, or tighten this up, and she did. Like, kudos to her. And they start to, they like it when they see their feedback and suggestions put to work. So it takes time. I really don't think I have changed drastically myself from like when I started to now. Like I have, but I really think the sport has evolved. It goes through phases, and I think right now it's tending to favor my physique. It didn't always in the past, and there's gonna be a time where it's going to probably transition to a different look, and maybe it won't favor my physique. So, that's where it also comes down to, being true to yourself, not trying to emulate someone else to the T, because your time and what you are bringing will eventually be recognized. It's just, a matter of when.
Stay the course. Stay the course. And
Stay the course.
I can attest to the judging thing. I never like I recently at the last show I was at, I was taking pictures after, and the judge came up to me and he's like, "You're so much leaner at this show than your last show. Like, really good job." And I was like, "Oh, thank God." Like, that's what I was trying to do, you know, I was working on that. And to hear that is really great as a competitor too, because you know, like, you're focusing on what you need to focus on. Like, the results will come, and it's not necessarily like this race to the finish. Like, it's more about like, why did you really start in the beginning, you know, like, what's this really mean for you? And kind of branching off the last question, I'd love to know like what you think truly sets apart like the number one from, let's say, the number 10 at a competitive show like the Arnold or the Olympia, or I mean like the Olympia or the Arnold.
Honestly, hairs. Like it at that point. I think it's really coming down to personal preference. You know, for us on those stages, we have a judging panel that has, you know, sometimes like 13 judges. And the competitors who have competed in front of a lot of those judging panels, like they might get a better score because those judges are more familiar with them. You know, judges are human beings. They have human nature instincts, whereas like familiar, you know, faces that are familiar or people they know, like it's human nature, and I don't blame them for that at all. But I think that could be a factor, personal preference, and you know, whatever you know, I think there's, you know, like for example, Angelica, she's Miss Bikini Olympia. Well, she goes to Arnold. She's going to be the number one person that people are looking at and getting compared to. So what I did with Olympia and Arnold was like, I would look at Angelica. Luckily for us these days, we have social media where we can see where the top competitors are, you know, coming in, or your people that you're going to be up against are coming in condition wise. Okay, well, she was coming in full. So it's like, all right, I need to stay full. So like you know, keeping my fullness, that's what I was doing to kind of gauge leading into the show. And you have to just either like just completely knock it out of the park to beat out that top person, which this year at Olympia, Laurel Lee from Canada, she did. It was like her first year as a pro, and she like came in second. Like that is phenomenal. I mean, she has a crazy physique. The woman is like insane, but it's going to take someone like that to just like, boom, here I am, someone fresh, someone who is just like, that has that wow factor. But it's really, I mean, at that point, it's like, it can go so many different directions. Like maybe they didn't like the hair on one girl as much as the other, you know, or whatever. So it's so small. It's so small. And, you know, when people ask me like, oh, you placed, you know, this year I got 11th place at Olympia. And with the lineup and the whole point system that we had to go through, like I was just hoping to even crack top 15. So when people ask like, oh, how'd you do? I'm like, I got 11th, and I'm stoked. They're like, oh, that's, you know, sorry. And I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. I'm pretty damn pumped on getting 11th place or even qualifying to go there. But it's very, very small that you're getting judged on, and there can only be one winner, you know, and
right.
So
yes, there's only
that's my feedback.
One winner at the end of the day who actually gets the title, but there's
and I think
multiple.
Before we end, I'm going to say this because I think this is very important to say, and a lot of people in the sport forget this, but you know, there can only be one winner, and it doesn't matter how hard you worked or how hard this person worked or how much this person showed off how hard they worked. You know, everybody worked hard. Everyone has made sacrifices, and there can only be one winner. And I think so many people forget that. They get pissed off that they didn't win. And it's just like really? Like, you don't think that this person didn't train ever, or, you know, what, for whatever reason, but there can only be one winner. I think people need to be, you know, definitely go there with the expectations and the fight to win. But if you don't win, like, so many people, I think, need a big slice of humble pie shoved in their face because they just, that's one thing that just really irks me. Not just in the IFBB, but also in the NPC also, So
Mm.
everybody works hard. Everyone makes sacrifices, and there can only be one winner. And if it's not you, try hard and come back. That's what's so great about the sport, is that there's always a goal.
Yes, I love that. I'm glad that you added that. It's true. Like, I think about it all the time. Like, we can be so hard on ourselves if we don't get like a physical affirmation or validation of a win, right? But it's like there's so many other things to be proud of. And then, like, really objectively look at the person who did win and just be like, okay, I get it,
Yeah.
Like,
I look back on pictures sometimes after shows, and I'm like, like that just seems so odd, like all in my mind. I'll look back on pictures and I'm like, okay, I can see it. Yeah,
yes.
I can see that now. I can see why this person placed here. I can see this totally. But when
Yeah.
we're up there, we're just like, it's, we don't
Because we're
see
on
the
the prowl,
grand
we want
picture.
to win. Like we're in that competitive zone where we're only thinking about show up, show up, show up. So if our version of showing up is not satisfied by like the outcome we wanted, then we're like, well, that doesn't make sense. This is not what I
Right.
planned. But yeah, it is important to remember that there is only one winner. And just to wrap this up, even with all the amazing golden nuggets, seriously, this has been extremely incredible. And what is, I'm serious, like I'm looking at my notes page and I'm like, this is going to be really fun to like edit and
Are
get
you
out.
writing this all down?
Oh yeah, but that just is more mental for me. It helps me like
Okay.
yeah, it helps me to keep that conversation because I'm like, okay, it's almost meditative, but like what's one piece of advice that you would give to competitors on their road to pro or even to people who have never competed before?
Okay. So my advice to people going for their pro card, road to pro, bless your hearts. It's an awesome, it's a great sport. It's a great league to be a part of. But be patient. Don't beat yourself up. Don't let it consume your life. Um, you know, it's just like we were talking about, there's only one winner in national shows. It's like winning the flipping lottery, okay? Or it's like a crazy, like algebraic equations in order to win a national show. It can be so hard. And I've seen so many, like I now as a coach get major anxiety when my athletes go to nationals because I've seen, it's so hard. Like it's so hard to watch sometimes. Like you have such a short period of time on stage and, maybe you didn't catch the judge's eyes because they've been watching competitors for 12 hours or whatever. Don't take it with a grain of salt. It's not the end of the world. Just because you earn your pro card, you are entering another league that you are going to be at the bottom, starting working your way back up. So enjoy the NPC. If it happens, it happens, but don't bust yourself and don't sacrifice everything for this pro card because, not everyone will get their pro card. Everybody someone who's getting into the NPC and starting out and wanting to do their first competition, just remember why you're doing this. You're doing this for a reason, and hopefully it's for a reason because you want to better yourself. You want to try a different sport. You want to have a goal. That's the right reasons. If you've never competed before and you are, I want to be a bikini pro before you've ever competed and you just started working out, well, you might have a really long road and who knows how you're going to take criticism, so you have to have a strong mind, a strong will, love it for what it is, and don't close your eyes to all the gifts you get from your journey along the way. It can open so many doors, and so many people are focused on just one thing that they don't realize what's coming at them in other directions. So, look at it as a whole, as a fitness journey, and, whether it's a pro card, whether it's a win, whether it's last place, but you have changed your body and you are so proud of it. You've inspired all these people around you, like whatever reason it is, just, remember why you did it, who you are, and the benefits that come along with it.
Mm.
There.
Wow. I have nothing to add. That is so beautiful. And yeah, just really inspiring, even, and really quite real and genuine. So thank you for sharing that. And
You're
um,
welcome.
yeah, I just really appreciate you taking the time to come on here. And we talked about so much stuff. So like I said before, I am really grateful for you just being open and honest and actually providing really great feedback and insight on that. So I want everybody else to be able to say thank you. I want everybody else to be able to let you know how much they appreciate it, some of their golden nuggets, their main takeaways. So can you just let everybody know where they can follow you or connect with you and just support you in your journey?
Sure. Then I have an Instagram, which is Camile_Periat. I have a website, Camile Periat. I also have Santa Cruz Sports Nutrition in Santa Cruz, Power Fitness. It's an awesome gym in Santa Cruz that anyone is welcome to come out and train. We have like a booty dungeon. It's incredible.
Wow.
So I can be found at numerous places, but those are some great ways to find me.
That's awesome. The Booty Dungeon. I love that name.
It's pretty badass. I'm not going to lie.
I want to come check that out. I'm going to talk to you about that.
You should. You should.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you again so much. And everybody, all that information is going to be in the podcast notes on celestial.fit/podcast. So make sure that you go there, click the links, check her out, make sure you connect with her. Let her know what you loved about this episode. And of course, please make sure that you subscribe to this podcast so you never miss an episode. And with all of that being said, I hope you guys have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this podcast.